the sense of concern of others' well-being. There are two types. One, biological factor. That's biased, too much mixed with attachment. That sometimes you see may get sometimes because of the
Distress.
Distress or demoralize these things, because the attachment based on ignorance. Now, biological factors sort of because of the sense of concern or affection take as a seed. Then you realize human intelligence. Then, with help of human intelligence, you see that feeling of sort of sense of concern of others' well-being. Then reach another level through training, not a biological factor. Now that unbiased, without attachment. So any sort of emotion based on attachment or based on ignorance, always a limitation, always a limit. The other one, so some strong feeling or emotion which is based on reason, logic, or intelligence. Now, on the other hand, the mind, no shape. So, the limit may be
so one could almost say there is no limit to how far it can go.
With compassion.
So there is unbiased. So maybe, I think the second level of sort of sense of concern of others' well-being is, I think, because of much related with conviction, determination.
So there is a courage as well. In that there is a courage and it's voluntarily adopted.
That kind of affection only human being can develop. Animal, no, because no intelligence.
So much of the current scientific description of empathy versus compassion is really very rooted in the biological processes. So His Holiness is wondering, in teasing out the relationship between the two, we need to bring in the compassion arisen as a result of trained process. So in which case the relationship may be a different one.
That training, certainly we can develop, because of that through training, that kind of that level of compassion. Or non-believer to non-believer.
Even among non-believers, you don't need religion for that. Yeah.
Yes. And I think His Holiness pointed out something very important, that I think as long as these training studies just 1 week, it's very short, we tap in systems which are very primitive. I mean, for example, the system which we see activated after 1 week of loving kindness training is a system which is known to be, associated to affiliation. For example, to rewards. If you show mothers the picture of their newborn child, you would activate a similar system. It comes with feelings of warmth and love and positive feeling, and our subjects also reported that. Even if that's not the compassion you talk about, the higher level compassion, because it's kinship, it's rooted in a system which is which came about biologically because of mother-child bonding. This is a very old system, and animals have that too. I think that at the beginning you use this system to develop the feeling of compassion. And now an interesting question is, what will we see when we do a year or 2 years of compassion training? Will the subject show very different networks? And I think yes, but we don't have the answer yet. This is the first step of developing. But I think it is very important that we can show that even after a week, subjects can change their brain. And they are not children, they are adults. And in Western society, there is a lot of plasticity research in the motor domain, in memory, but not so much in the heart domain. So showing that after a week you can change network, which a motivational affective network, is already a big step. And another, I think, important take-home message is that now these people were given something new, because before training, the suffering just flooded their brain and they had very strong stress reactions. Now, after 1 week of loving kindness training, they started engaging a new system, which is a rather positive system of, feeling of warmth, strength. We asked them afterward, how did you had a different experience? And they reported it was fantastic, because now we were not so helpless with this whole suffering, but we could put something against it, which is warmth and concerns, and so we felt less stressed. So the idea is that if we can develop compassion, this is what we would call also perhaps for medical profession a better coping strategy than either being too empathic, overwhelmed with negative emotion, burning out and suicide, or they get cynical. They just disconnect, don't feel anything anymore, but then it comes with a withdrawal and not with help, not with a contact. And so I think these data show that you can give something else, which is compassion, and that has a biological basis at the beginning. And then I think to get universal compassion, that's a big step. You need probably the frontal lobes, because you have to override in-group, out-group distinction. So what we can show in other experiments is that people have empathy for people they like, and they think it's in-group, it's my group,
Attachment.
But in the moment you only say the person now sitting to your right getting pain is an out-group member. He is from another football club. Then empathy is gone. We don't measure anything. And this is a very biological response, mine in-group and out-group. And to overcome that, you need training. You need to develop and to develop. And so we need longer studies than just a week.
Empathy, I think actually is very much based on self-centered attitude.
Exactly. Yes.
Compassion is level, the compassionate animal
So,
according to your sort of definition,
understanding,
empathy and compassion.
Yes. Empathy is self-centered.
It seems to see empathy cannot extend towards your enemy, troublemaker.
Exactly.
The compassion can go?
Yes, can.
Oh, that's
exactly. Yes. So if
now very clear.
Taking an issue with you, Tanya, I'm just disputing the characterization of empathy as being self-centered.
it can lead to.
Because, for example, even through training, an ordinary person, now we're not talking about in the Buddhist context, we're talking about a secular context. As a result of training and compassion, an individual may be able to develop compassion to someone that the person, sees as a rivalry, kind of a rival or an enemy.
Yes.
But in order to generate compassion, the person has to feel connected.
Yes.
Empathy needs to be there.
So this is what we have in this model. Empathy needs to be there. This is our presumption. A little bit of empathy needs to be there, always. It's neutral. It's basically I can feel the pain, and so I know I have to do something.
Tanya, can you describe in plain English what exactly do you mean by empathy?
Empathy is just the ability to share feelings with others. Very simple. And now, empathic distress is when you get so much that then you get preoccupied with feeling so bad.
So, for example, like in natural setting, we tend to feel strong empathy towards our kin.
Yes.
And the reason why His Holiness was characterizing this as a self-referential, at least, if not self-centered, is because the underlying reason is has to do with me.
Yeah.
Actually, you
It's
It's my
mentioned
kid. Yes.
the person is from your body, right? Then as soon as it knows that person belongs to another sort of group, then no
Yes,
longer is
then
that
it's
feeling.
over. Yes.
So mine,
It's mine.
the feeling of mine,
Yes.
No.
But the capacity.
So that also I usually make distinction. The biased compassion very much oriented about others' attitude. The unbiased compassion, not regardless their attitude. So your enemy, attitude very negative, but still they sentient being or human being. So on that level, you see extend
Yes.
sense of concern of their well-being. So much related with, and then also, but I don't know. Okay.
So I think this is what you are talking about. This is the model I showed at the beginning. Cognitive capacity need to join the affective capacity. And only when they come together, you can go to a wider compassion. And the training study here we show are first steps in developing the concern and warmth and motivation. But they are not developing yet the higher capacities of equanimity and non-biased compassion. But I think what is important is that even though empathy might be, like you said, a neutral capacity we have to resonate with others, to feel what others have, it can turn, it doesn't have to, but it can turn into a very self-centered, distressing, and non-adaptive state, and lead to a lot of problems in nursing homes or teachers. And so it's important to know the difference between the wholesome state of concern and compassion and the non-wholesome state of distress. It's a danger.
There's two routes. The other route, when empathy turns into personal distress.
Yes.
Is it a function of empathy, or is it a sort of a function of a lack of some other faculty, like
very good question.
cognitive, like understanding?
Yes, I think it's a mix. It's a very good question. So if that is the case, then why would you blame empathy for it? No, you are absolutely right. So there is studies showing that even children, very, very young children, differ already. For example, the mother starts bleeding, and some children respond with distress and facial, and they go back, and other people other children go to the mother and help and have no facial expression of stress. And so it's probably also individual difference, which are very early on in childhood, in the person itself, which determine how you react, whether you have a tendency to go from empathy in distress, or you have a tendency to go from empathy.
And probably it also has to do with confidence, and courage has to do.
Yeah, and then I think you can train to learn to go the route up and not down by, for example, learning to regulate your emotion, learn to view the world different, not me, but like what is the other, to get the focus to the other, and to have a clear self-other distinction. So another thing we can see is that empathy gets into personal distress if it gets emotion contagion, you call that. It's a very unconscious melting for me and you. I don't know anymore that I'm a different person than you. It's very often with mothers and children. They get very stressed when the children get stressed. But that doesn't help the child, because then the child gets even more sad and distressed when the mother gets distressed instead of caring and soothing. And there is very interesting research in developmental psychology about mothers being different too. This depends on their attachment history with their own mothers, whether mothers can just be compassionate and caring towards children in distress, and other mothers cannot. Other mothers tend to go into distress which leads to a big difficulty for the child. Because then the child, instead of getting calmed down, get even more stressed. So it will be, I think, a future research determining who are the people who tend to go into personal distress, and what can you do to train people to go into the other arm, the other route. The consequences for health services can be very big. And in Western societies, medical doctors do not get training. They don't get training in this affective mental capacity. They are put into the doctors, into the hospitals, and they have to deal with a lot of suffering, but they don't get any mental training. They're left alone with their constitution, and that's a problem. So Jim Doty will tell us more about that probably.
James, I think if you want to make a comment, you need to make it with the microphone.
This one's not working.
Somebody check the microphones, please. Make sure they're working.
There's one here, I think one.
Yes, just as a physician with a great interest in this topic, you're absolutely correct. I mean, unfortunately, physicians are not given enough training to get insight into their own feelings and how to process them. And to show you even the mindset that still exists on some level, although I think it's dramatically changing. I had a conversation with a dean of a major medical school regarding the fact that we should teach the students, the medical students, compassion training to make them more resilient to deal with these issues you're talking about. And his statement was to me, quote, the students' curriculum is already too full to teach compassion. Now, can you even imagine that the core basis of us being physicians is our ability to be compassionate, and in Western medicine, it is disregarded. That being said, we're seeing a renaissance, if you will, based on this work, and the insights that have been garnered from neuroscience, which is completely changing this view. So we're now seeing at a number of leading institutions interest in these contemplative practices in regard to training healthcare workers, resilience to decrease burnout.
Yes.
And we're already seeing a significant impact. Unfortunately, medicine can be very recalcitrant when they're showing new ways. It's like elders who are set in their ways, they do not wish to change. And it will take some time, but I'm really confident that we're beginning this process.
No, I think we've come to a very significant, in some sense, challenge, because what we're pointing to is something of, I think, general applicability, that the middle way between coldness and cynicism or abstract distancing from patients and those in suffering in order to maintain our own equilibrium and dispassionate concern. You know, it can become very cold. On the other hand, if one becomes so involved, then the other extreme leads to burnout, self-destruction, and so forth. And so we tend to move between these two extremes. It's almost like a madhyamaka position. It must be a middle way where there is empathic concern. One does connect to the feelings of the others. Those are shared, but then they're held in a way which is, you pointed to the head, they are held in a way which allows for, you might say, intelligent response as a physician, as a caring and concerning person, as a mother or father or companion in life through friendship, so that the heart and the mind are together here also. I think of the arts, it's another element, you know, the beauties of nature, the work with the artistic element also requires that quality of the feeling life be held in a certain balance, so that we can write those beautiful words of poetry or give the painter, as painters, representing things with beauty. I wonder if are there practices for holding that middle way within the Buddhist tradition? Are there ways of schooling so that one really does possess the resilience, the quality of alertness and clarity without grasping.
Generally, in many instances such as this, the role of our understanding and insight really plays a very important one. Something that other people may find very difficult to hold, but with a little different perspective, and bringing your insight allows you a much better way of handling it. So it's really the role of insight and understanding.
No, not only is the inner world sort of concern, but
In many
everywhere.
areas.
I mean, the meaningful dialogue means is to use intelligence, interest there, interest and our interest, and make balance, not by emotion, but by intelligence. So everywhere.
Could I just comment on the statement you made, which is profound in many ways, but the other interesting aspect of that is if you look at artists and some of the greatest works that artists have conceived, they actually have grown out of immense pain. While, of course, our desire is to relieve suffering, many great things and insights can be gained as well from suffering.
Yeah, by great effort and great
그래서 아티스트의 쇼지.
Your Holiness, I think Richie has a theme he would like to introduce.
Well, it's a theme that I'd like to pick up on from some of your comments, Your Holiness. You have talked about to realize unbiased compassion requires training. And my very limited understanding of the Buddhist tradition, at least in some components of the Buddhist tradition, would hold that when we have a human birth, we come into the world with a luminous mind that has the quality of compassion, and that the practice of contemplation is one of familiarizing ourselves with what is already there. It's not actually training something that's not there, but rather recognizing a quality that is already inherent.
That's right.
And so one of the struggles that I've had as a scientist is trying...
qualities and 뜻이하고요. seed이다.
So it's more in the form of a seed rather than full-blown qualities.
Okay. But one of the fascinating things that's been happening now in the scientific arena is in some of the studies which Your Holiness has heard a little bit about that are now being done in very, very young infants. These are infants that...
Oh, yes.
Infants.
5 and 6 months of age. They seem to exhibit unbiased compassion in certain respects. So
Yes, I think.
Several different experiments now have shown this.
Some extent, right?
To some extent.
Yes.
Also agrees.
To some extent.
True. Very true.
And so one conjecture, one hypothesis is that very, very early in life, we have those qualities, and then as we develop, we encounter suffering, and our minds get tainted or colored, and we then, as adults, the training that we need to do is to rediscover these qualities which may have been present as seeds, as you say, earlier in life. So is that an account which makes sense with the Buddhist tradition?
I think not only Buddhist tradition, but all, I think, major religious tradition, which stress importance of practice of love and compassion.
So it's really more in the form of a potential. For example, the potential for knowledge exists in,
Awareness.
and basic capacity for awareness exists. But in terms of education and to knowledge, we really have to cultivate it and improve. So similarly, he would see these qualities more in the form of potential.
Well, one of the things that the way I often describe this is we know that language is something which is a unique human characteristic, but there have been some case studies of feral children, children who are very unfortunate, have unfortunate development and are in the wild and are not raised by families and are alone in the wild, and they do not develop the capacity for language. It's not that they don't develop the capacity for language, they don't show language, they don't speak. And in the same way, could it be that compassion is something which is a potential that we all come into the world with, but we require a community around us which exhibits that compassion in order for that seed to be nurtured? And it's really fundamentally the same as language. If you're not raised in a linguistic community, you won't develop language. And if you're not raised by individuals who are caring, the seed won't be nurtured and you will not exhibit compassion.
Of course, environment plays a very important role.
Then I think basically the biologically social animals and not social animal also is differences. So then we human beings social animal. Now here again, then I think as we already discussed, the intelligence is the key factor to promote these some good values. So in order to because of the dealing with intelligence, language is very sort of the importance of the matter.
Mathieu Ricard also has a comment he would like to add. If
Yes.
we can just turn our attention to him.
So regarding what Tanya and Arthur and James said, many nurses, they are taught they should keep that balance, not to be too close emotionally, and not also to be too distant. If they are too distant, they don't care. If they are too close, then as they suffer with the person day after day after day, then it's too much. They're overwhelmed, they burn out. So that is true if the only thing they have is this empathy, only empathy. So the point is not to get rid of empathy, of course. We want still to continue to be aware of the other's feeling, but not only empathy. If we only have empathy, then we will have to be careful all the time, not too much, not too little. So the role of loving kindness and warm heart and compassion is to provide a bigger space, like a buffer, so that we have much more resources to deal with the suffering of others without burning out. So maybe the small example, the electric pump to pump water. If they turn without water, then if they turn too fast, they become very hot and they burn. So we need water continuously to cool them down. So that's maybe the bigger role of loving kindness, compassion, human warmth. It prevents the negative effect of just empathy left on its own. So that can turn into overwhelming distress. And then we either leave the profession or we become cold. We don't want to feel. So that's why adding the space of compassion makes such a big difference.
Tanya, did you want to
And I have
join your voice? Your Holiness?
I have
would you like to-
another question to His Holiness, because you said it's mainly the intellect which will allow to develop compassion. And when we look into the brain in these very first steps of loving kindness, we see very strong activation of motivational system, of affiliative caring system, which are the basis, for example, for mother-child caring, but also later for relationships and so on. So we would say you also need a motivation and emotion. So for example, love is conceptualized in the West as an emotion. We conceptualize love as an emotion. So would you not say we need both a motivation and emotion and intellect to develop full compassion?
So generally speaking, if we look at many of the qualities,
저는 근우디에 근우디 늦지 고야 돼. 야 싫어 좋아져.
so for example, if you look at many of the qualities such as compassion, loving kindness, and so on, which are in the psychological Western psychological conception more in the affect domain, in the Buddhist conceptualization we would refer to them as belonging to the mental processes that are more in the style of aspiration and yearning, so dumba.
Grasping.
And there is a recognition that in order for these kind of processes to really be more efficiently directed, it needs to be in some sense steered and complemented by the insight and the wisdom factor. And even with the respect to motivation, in order to ensure that the motivation is directed to the right one, again you need the role of insight and understanding. So it's in some sense, intertwined.
Yes.
다링의 삼절다.
So that's how he would see it.
신 누구장자 갈치부 있는 탈로야 디아리.
Because if we just stay purely in this domain of what the Buddhist psychology would refer to as this kind of class of aspiring, yearning processes, then there is a danger of falling into extreme.
I think another word we can say physical action, verbal action, mental action. Whether the action become constructive or destructive,
So yesterday we spoke about intrinsic absence of intrinsic existence.
So things are relative. So now intelligence have the ability to judge. Under these circumstances, you should do this. Under these circumstances, you should do this. Like that. So I think that all the credit goes to wisdom, intelligence. I feel. So we have I think fortunately, perhaps that God creates, we have some special sort of ability of intelligence.
To use it.
Now that really is an individual case. You see, real teacher, you should do this, you should not do this, for your own long-term interest. So education is so important. Certain sort of the emotions looks very positive. So with blind faith, it may create problem. So make balance, judge, holistic. Emotion, no holistic vidua. So only intelligence look holistic. Do you agree? Yes. So these experts, brain specialists.
It's a high aspiration.
And Your Holiness, the area of the brain that many of us have been talking a lot about, the prefrontal cortex, is an area where thinking and emotion come together. It's such an important area where they converge. And so we can, when we use our thought to direct our emotions, that's something that seems to involve the prefrontal cortex, and because of its connections, these areas come together. We call it a convergence zone.
So we speak a lot about the brain regions that are involved in emotions, but what about brain regions that are involved in intelligence? And
The ability of investigate which part of brain?
Depends which kind of intelligence. So many scientists today would argue that there are multiple kinds of intelligence. There's the intelligence that is measured by the IQ test. There's musical intelligence. There's the intelligence that we think of as emotional intelligence, which our friend Dan Goleman has studied extensively. So it depends on which kind of intelligence, and I think that one of the important issues here is recognizing that just as there are many different facets of emotion, many different facets of cognition, there are many different kinds of intelligence which would be represented in different brain networks. one of the things we do see is that on very gross, coarse dimensions of intelligence, there does seem to be some scaling of relative brain size with intelligence. So if you look at brain size corrected for body size, so larger creatures have bigger brains in part because they have bigger bodies, but if you correct for the size of the body, generally speaking, there is a relation between the relative size of the brain and the coarse definition of intelligence. So there is some relation with overall brain size, but that's a very crude way of thinking about intelligence. When us neuroscientists think about intelligence, we want to know what specific kind of intelligence we're talking about.
当然第二就是intelligence的공간 시험을 대등의 intelligence 지도가. 나 저기가 로봇들 시작한.
So some of the kind of varieties of intelligence that you talked about, quite a lot of them are very intimately connected with sensory experience. But the intelligence that His Holiness is talking about is
the music or sports.
sports. Yeah.
The mental, you see, it's judgmental, right?
Judgmental.
Or analyze. But you see, mainly based on sensory.
Yeah.
Very sensory experience.
I-
이루 양장을 통해서
So His Holiness is talking about the sheer ability of the mind
다 그것은
to
시대에
apply itself.
또또또미 여시다
To
펠지 또그런
ability,
거죠.
apply itself. So we have been talking about conceptual versus non-conceptual.
Yeah,
So this is in the domain of thought.
So I have put this slide back because the network which allow you to reason and reflect about the minds of others is nearly the same network which allows you to reason about your own mind. And we tend to say that this is a network which gets activated whenever thoughts get stimulus independent. So it's like even if it's dark, no sensory input coming
right.
in, I'm thinking with myself. There is a midline network between medial prefrontal and parietal lobe, which is sometimes also called default network. Default network is because you don't give any task to the person in the scanner, and you will see this network lighting up. Why? Because the person is thinking. Even if the eyes are closed and no task, the person is thinking and reflecting upon themselves.
공간 시험을 유인이 중대 왜 참바에 물어봐. 든지. 다 네가 그냥 들어가셔야겠다.
But these are, even though
Yeah,
the
you
sensory perceptions may not be active, but it is kind of tapping into the memory of the experience of the
Of course,
senses.
yes. So you need to retrieve from memory from somewhere information what you can combine. Yes.
But I think His Holiness is referring to, if I'm correct in understanding him, referring more to the reasoning process. The processes that are associated with the reasoning.
That's
Yeah, I
also.
mean,
Moral
there-
reasoning,
The one that you're
logical
talking about is the
reasoning.
default. That's a sort of a
Yeah,
habitual. Kind
It's
of,
like reflecting about
Yeah.
episodic things.
There,
and
there,
so on.
there is, there has been some studies done of that sort. In fact, there have been studies of Einstein's brain. I actually once held a piece of Einstein's brain. It now is in several different universities. And there have been studies of one specific part, mostly, which is a part in the parietal lobe, which is toward the back of the brain, where different sensory systems come together. Vision, audition, and touch all come together there. And Einstein has descriptions of thinking in images. There is some suggestion that there is increased connectivity in that area of his brain, which may have been associated with his unusual skill at engaging in that kind of reasoning. But these, at this point, are really, I think, very gross conjectures.